Okay, so right on the dot, 12 o'clock, let's start the reel and let me introduce today's session. How do I teach this? Making the best lessons out of the worst teaching materials by Danny Jones. Danny is based in Korea, where he's been teaching all ages for 11 years now. He's currently teaching at Youngjin University in Daegu. He's also the financial affairs chair for KOTESOL and the treasurer for KOTESOL's Busan branch. Danny would like to ask that you keep questions until the end of the presentation. We will be checking the chat box, and we will ask you to raise your hands digitally to speak at that time. If you can, please give everybody a chance to ask questions. Okay, and the Easter egg will be announced at the end of the session. Please help me in welcoming Danny. Please unmute your mics and please offer a round of applause. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Danny, please.
All right, I'm unmuted, and am I able to share my screen here?
Yes.
let me see here. There we go. Okay, so I should be in one small corner of the screen and the rest should be there. Yeah, the only reason I say to hold your questions is because I might not be able to see them in the chat log. So anyway, hi, welcome to my presentation. And also, oh, by the way, if like something goes wrong and there's like some kind of technical difficulty, please do interrupt so that I don't embarrass myself there. Let me just see if I can see everybody else here, the participants. All right. So can everyone hear me? Is it good? Okay. Yeah, I'm not able to see everybody when I'm sharing the screen, but it's okay. I'm still learning a little bit about Zoom. I am not, so I'll get into a little bit about me right now. As a matter of fact, this is the truth. I have 3 broken ribs and I am icing myself up nice. So yeah, I'm delivering this with 3 broken ribs. They said that I don't have to do this, but I'm like, you know what, it's going to be the same either way. I put a lot of effort into this. I'd rather go ahead and just do it than not do it at all. It's going to be the same amount of pain either way. And there's no pain at all so long as I'm not moving around. But the reason I say I have 3 broken ribs is in case this whole session sucks, and then I have that to fall back on ahead of time. So nobody can say that I suck at giving presentations. I can just BS my way out of that. So I'm not perfect, and I know it. But so that's one thing I want to establish, is that I'm not the go-to end-all perfect guy for how to make the perfect lesson. That being said, I'm very confident in my ability to make good lessons out of bad materials, and I've had a lot of them. So I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again, and hopefully you'll be able to see all of this. Let's do the present part. Okay. Yeah, a bit about me. I've been spending 11 years in Korea now, and I've taught all ages. I taught at, kindergartens, hagwons, and high school, middle school, all of those. I decided on university and adult teacher students because those are the ones that really, in general, want to learn the most, and you, in general, don't have to worry about bad behavior. But one thing has been common in all of my years of Korea, which is just horrible materials sometimes that I have to deal with. Another reason I decided to go to university is because it's not a business. And if it's a business, it's often run by people with no background in education, but businessmen. And you need to follow their materials. And often their materials might suck, and you don't know how to teach them. And the students are going to be bored. And when I first came to Korea, I was terrible at my job, and I didn't realize it until looking back on it, where I was like, oh my God, I should have done this and this and this instead of, like I could have taken that lesson and I could have made it into this other thing that would have been so much better. But I'm going to teach a little bit about what I've learned, and hopefully, I can show you a thing or two about how to make really what I think are excellent lessons out of just terrible materials. And believe it or not, you can do it. You have to keep in mind though, in general, I don't know exactly, I'm sure that this is going to be a mixed bag of people, you guys out there, but you're going to have two bosses that you need to keep in mind. And those are the students and the administrators themselves. The students themselves are your boss, absolutely. Even the kindergarteners, good Lord, yes. Good Lord, yes, they are. They totally are. And kindergarteners, by the way, want to learn. Like what is, you can unmute your mic and answer me, by the way, when I ask this question. What do children always, there's one question word that they always ask, young children. Anybody know?
Why?
Why, exactly. What is that? That's a dog. Why? They ask why to everything. They do want to learn, believe it or not. They actually do. And you just got to make it into something that they enjoy. So let's see if yes, why? Good. I saw the, is there a way that I can see other people's windows? I want to be able to see other people, the participants, while I'm,
Yes.
like how do I do that?
You can click on participants at the bottom of the screen.
Participants at the bottom, and then can I see their windows or the
no, you probably
I can't.
Sorry.
Oh, well. So I'm just kind of talking to myself like a crazy man for a little bit. That's okay. I'm crazy as it is, so it all works out.
Danny, do you see your video feed?
I do not, no.
Oh, okay.
Maybe if I, let's see here. Am I able to? It's okay. I'll just take, maybe I can look at the.
There is a view, if you see over on the top right of your screen where it gives you a choice of view. The side-by-side gallery will give you more people's faces.
View, okay. Oh, there we go. Now I see it. Yay. All right. Good, good. Okay, I'm not talking to just myself anymore. Okay, so yeah, in general, though, this is a game of keeping your bosses happy. Those are the students and the teachers as well. The student is your boss in this sense. Keep them satisfied. Everything's going to be fine. This is one of the reasons I was done with teaching young kids, is because it's kind of hard to do so. They really don't want to be there. They just want to go home. You got to make it. And then even the middle schoolers and high schoolers, you got to make it so how much language can they learn without them wanting to kill themselves? Make it so that they want to learn as much as they can with it. Don't let them kill themselves. Don't let it, so you got to find that balance. It's one of the reasons again, I'm better with university students, because in general, they kind of want to be there. And even if they don't, they understand the importance of it. But they want to learn more than you realize. Like even the ones that don't want to be there, they don't want to waste their time. They don't want it to be like, oh, they're 1 hour of my life gone. You know, they want something out of it. They do. My personal favorites. So yeah, just keep them engaged. In general, my personal favorite classes that I ever had was at a place called Pagoda Academy. Does anyone know Pagoda Academy? It's an adult Hagwon. It's where you pay, they will pay money for their own classes. And often it's sometimes it's one-on-one tutoring. So with these kids, I say kids just because I always say that they're adults. They're totally adults. But they, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So they gave me materials sometimes that I thought was just bizarre, and it would have been bad materials had they not been had they not been so engaged by it. One of them, I'll show you this video. One of my students wanted to learn, hey, I saw this Pepsi commercial and I wanted to know what it was about. So I watched the Pepsi commercial. That was the lesson. That was the teaching material. And what it is, if anybody's seen Uncle Drew, can you hear it, by the way? Am I able to, can you hear the sound? You can hear it? What it is, Kyrie Irving, who's an NBA player, played a prank like on these guys that play that play basketball just like in a neighborhood, and he dressed up like an old man, and he's like, oh, can I play? And so he just is absolutely destroying them in this basketball tournament. Is how the Pepsi commercial goes. Is so that was the lesson. That was the lesson that he requested. This is such an unorthodox thing. This is unlike anything I learned in ESL. My TESOL training is how to make this into a lesson. But I did, and it was a great lesson too, because he was so engaged by it. He wanted to learn it. He wanted to learn about this, and I made it into a lesson for him because he wanted to. Can everyone understand so far? Yeah. So another guy, one more example. One guy was, I think he was autistic, which is okay because I'm on the spectrum myself. But he was a doctoral student, and his specialty was underwater hyperbaric welding. And he's like, I need to learn about underwater hyperbaric welding. So I got an engineering book, and I got a captive audience here. So I think that if I were to go into depth of exactly the contents of this lesson, it might break the Geneva Accords. But he was engaged by this. Like, he could just talk about this, the underwater hyperbaric. I don't know it. I was learning more from the textbook myself, that I was teaching about this thing, but he was engaged. The point is, they're engaged by it. If it engages them, it's good material, period. There is no bad material that really truly engages them and makes them want to learn and want to be there and want to speak and want to produce. If they are listening and reading and they want to speak and they want to write about it, bug-eyed, that's good material, period. It is good material if it works with them. So, quick thing, how do you make that into a lesson? Well, my favorite thing I do is how I learned it in my KOTESOL training. You just find the vocabulary and expressions that they wouldn't know, that they likely wouldn't know, and then you teach that. Also teach a little bit around it. What discussion could be had of it? It could be had of it. How do you make this into something that they're able to blah, 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 talk about? Okay, if they're able to, basically, you're not holding the bike behind them. You kind of push the bike, and then they start blah blah blahing themselves. And if they make a mistake or two, that's fine. What's going to make them start blah blah blahing about it? Okay, that's really what you want to find out. In general, what I do, this is the easy part of the how do I teach this, and then we'll get to the harder part. What I like to do is I like to find the vocabulary, listen to the vocab. Oh, by the way, I made a little virtual handout here that I might be able to drag into the chat. Hopefully, I emailed you,
yes.
Kinsella. Did you get it? Yeah, I think, hopefully. All right, I'm going to try pasting it here into the sent. Did you see it? Virtual handout. Good. Okay. So on the virtual handout, you'll see I didn't do every single part of that commercial, but like I said, here's what he said. He's not going to know what a baller is, but I know that a baller is a person who, well, in British English, it could be a person who's very wealthy. In US English, it could be a person who plays ball very well. What I like to do is I like to match that with the vocabulary. You'll have vocabulary and definitions, A, B, C, D, and then the definitions 1, 2, 3, 4. You say, draw a line, just match the definitions. Then maybe they'll have something with a fill in the blanks, oh, he's good at basketball. He's a real blank. Which of those words is it? Then later on, you can have them make their own sentences with the vocabulary. Make a sentence with baller. Make a sentence with came up. I came up in this neighborhood. That's a slang word. Again, this is all stuff he wants to learn. He is paying for this lesson, and he brought me this material. These are things he probably doesn't know. And then you can also make discussion questions with those vocabulary or expressions. Where did you come up? What sports do you think you're good at? Are you a baller at any sports, etc.? Those kinds of things. I'm a huge fan personally of Kahoot. The lesson may already exist on Kahoot is a one good thing. If you search on it, people will share their lessons. They'll say, here, I made this thing. And a lot of even if the whole lesson doesn't exist, you might get a lot of ideas. And you could even take some from that. Like you could say, I'm going to take some of this and make it into, collage it into a little smorgasbord of a little smoosh it all together into one thing. That's how you make a lesson for students who bring you the materials that already engages them. And I could end this whole thing right here. Like, okay, there, that's how you make a lesson. There, that's the problem solved, right? Well, there's the other boss here. The problem is the admins. When the admins, and I don't know about what other countries you're joining me from, but in general, the admins very often are business people. Also, they might be just English linguists, but they don't have any experience actually teaching, actually educating. And this is where the problem comes in, because sometimes they will choose material that just, you can't, how do I teach this? That's why there, drop the title card. How do I teach this? Well, I've been here for 11 years and I know a thing or two about how to teach it. And the question is, how do you teach materials that suck? Answer, it depends on why it sucks. Remember, material doesn't suck if it engages the student. If it's something that's really weird, even then it could still be nice if it engages the student. If you don't like it, but they're talking about it, it's like, okay, let them push the bike, let them bike around, but make sure they don't fall around, teach them a thing or two. But if they're biking and, enjoying, if they're blah, blah, blahing, it's good. It's good. But often it's not the case. So the question is, why does it suck? Why doesn't it engage them? Bad material is material that does not engage them. I don't care how otherwise good it is. If it does not engage them, it's no good. So it could be like, Ulysses by James Joyce. If you give that to third graders, they're not going to know what to do with it. The brain is a sponge, but you can't suck it up. People are trying to, especially in Korea, the parents, really try to pack it all in there, but it's just going to fall right back out. It's not going to absorb. You need to absorb it. The brain is not going to be able to absorb Ulysses or quantum field theory, no matter how great, how well written it is. It's bad material for them because they're not engaged by it. They're not understanding it. And they're going to whip out their phones. They're going to, the students love to hide their phone in the book and they pretend that, some of them are tricky like that. They're good. They're smart. I'm smarter, but they're good. So there are several kinds of bad materials. What are bad materials? Bad materials are materials that don't engage the students. Materials are materials that make the students whip out their phones. What kinds of bad materials are there? I have narrowed it down to 5, and I might do more later as I continue my research here. But in general, it's materials that are too easy or too vague, materials that are too hard, materials that are too technical and focused on technical jargon, materials that are inappropriate. And I know that some of you mean, sometimes that means sexual. I don't mean it here. I mean, it's not appropriate for them, for the task, for their level or what they want to learn. And poorly made or confusing materials. I'll explain what all of those mean and how to teach them in a little bit. Oh, what time is it? Oh, it's only 12:19. It's only 12:19. Okay, good. I got plenty of time. So I will cover all of these ones. Yes, age level that does have a lot to do with it. Really, it has to do with how much they speak. Like, I've had plenty of older people who aren't as good at English as some children are. Kids. If you guys are teachers, you'll know that young kids really do pick up. The one thing that children do better than adults, period, they are better at it than adults, period, is learning a second language. They or learning any language at all, third, fourth, fifth, they pick it up. Their brains are better at picking up language, period. But yes, in general, it's how much it engages them really and how much they already know. So how do you teach material? I'm going to go over all of these little points. First one, number one, too easy. How do you teach material that is too easy? Well, for starters, remember, too easy is a bad thing. And even with kindergarteners, this might seem like a surprise. They may not want, kindergarteners and children want easy because to them, easy is hard. We've been talking about gamification. Believe it or not, people don't exactly want easy. They want a challenge, believe it or not. Video game advertisers have known something that educators don't, which is that no game advertisement has been advertised as easy. This is such an easy game. It's never happened. Even if it's the easiest game and you see it's the easiest game, it'll be advertised as hard. This is a true story, by the way. I downloaded a few games. I got a new phone, and I downloaded a few games on it just because I haven't downloaded games on a phone since Candy Crush came out. I downloaded a whole lot of them, and I went through them. They were too easy. I am literally addicted to this one game called Rush Royale. I don't recommend this game if you have things to do, because I swear to God, I'm addicted to this game. Really, I am. I was playing it while listening to the early morning presentation thing. The reason I'm addicted to it is because it is the only game of all the games that I downloaded that I kept losing at half of the time. I kept losing at this game half of the time. Every other game, it was just it was so easy, and that's not a brag. It's the game was developed easy. I think it's just for kids. This game, I keep losing at half of the time, and they, children might say they want the easiest setting, and that's true, because to them the easiest setting is still hard, and they might want something that's a bit more challenging. How do you teach something that's too easy? It's too easy because it teaches things that they already know. I'm sure some of you know, raise your hand if you know what the scaffolding effect is or have heard of the scaffolding effect. Yeah, good, right. So I'm in good company. The scaffolding, you don't need to scaffold where there's already a concrete floor. Don't worry about that. You just need to scaffold up from where their concrete platform already is. Just find their concrete platform and work up from it. And you can do this even with materials that are otherwise elementary. What if I'm going to give you an extreme example. What if you have to teach a book about colors? What are the colors to someone who already knows that? Well, don't teach about the individual colors. You don't just say, what is this? What is this? How, give me a sentence. What color is the apple? Don't do that. They already know that. That's not going to be a challenge to them. You could, if they're really advanced, here's one. Hey, is pink a girl's color? What if a boy wears pink? Is that okay? What does pink mean in your culture? If I walk in with a pink shirt, what do you think? Is it okay for a boy to wear a pink shirt? Hey, there's something to talk about. There's something to talk about. What does red symbolize in your culture? In the US, yes, colors with realia too. You can bring that in. In the US and a lot of Western cultures, red is a color of danger. It means, like blood or death. In China, red means luck. A lot of Chinese restaurants are decorated with these red lanterns, red decoration. It's good luck. What does red mean in your culture? Hey, what does the rainbow symbolize? In the US, the rainbow is a gay symbol. It's a symbol of LGBT. Does it mean something else? In many South American countries, it means, the Inca. Because that was the Inca civilization was, their flag was a rainbow. They're big on rainbows and mixing colors. What does that mean in your culture? Have something deeper. You could even do it like cooking. Hey, would you eat pink if chicken meat is pink? What does that mean? It could, you could have a lot of discussings. Yes, in Cusco, exactly right. So you could have a lot of discussions even with really basic materials, so long as you're scaffolding up from wherever they are. I'll give you another example. Let's say that it's a book about numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4. They already know how to count, but how do you teach that? How do you teach that? Well, don't teach them how to count to 1 and 100. Teach them about money. Teach them shopping. Teach them, look, how do you say this time? How do you say this year? How much money is this? In America, we say, 125, which is $1.25. You could even teach them how to say math equations. I learned how to say math equations myself in Korean and also in Chinese. I'm studying Korean and Chinese myself because my Chinese students don't, thankfully, my Chinese is better than I speak Chinese better than my Chinese students speak Korean or English. Let's put it that way. So that's yeah. But so I taught myself that if I'm learning a language, then I also know a thing or two about how to teach them right. Teach them math words. Teach them shopping. If it's about numbers, teach them around it. Teach them, teach deeper and broader is what you do with it. You don't have to teach them this, exactly what's in the book. That's what I did when I first started, and it's a big mistake that I made. It's not engaging them. It's too easy, and they want a moderate. They want a challenge that they can win at. Is really what it is. They don't just want to. They don't want something overwhelming. They want a challenge that they can win at. Give them something that they can win at, but start scaffolding from wherever they're. If the book is beneath wherever their cement floor is, find where their cement floor is, use the book to scaffold up from there, would be my general advice. Even books with no words, you could still do it. You could still say, hey, these guys, how did they meet? What are their names? What's going to happen next? What are they doing? What are they going to do? They're going out, so where are they going to go? Even then you could teach future tense, you could teach modals like could, would, should, dating. There's a lot that you could say even just from this, where there's nothing at all going on. Make them basically teach broader. Anything that could be about, you could make it about. The cousin of it is if there's too little to cover. What I love doing is I love doing a class survey beforehand. My Chinese class in particular is all my design. It's entirely my design. And they have absolutely nothing. They say you have complete and utter sovereignty, which I actually kind of dislike sometimes, because it's like, well, I got no railroad to follow. What if what I love doing is I love giving a class survey. I tell them, and I print it out in Chinese too. I print the English and Chinese. Google Translate is a godsend. And I just say, hey, scale of 1 to 10, 1 being so boring, or 1 to 5 even, 1 being so boring, 5 being the best, you could just talk about it all day long. How do you feel about movies? How do you feel about politics, news, current events, K-pop, health and exercise, the arts and entertainment, finances, cooking, music, just a whole broad range of topics. And in general, if you're going to find patterns. And I found that my students overwhelmingly love, in just about every class, love talking about movies and food. Movies, food, and TV are the ones that almost always win out against, like, say politics or whatever, or news. Especially in my Chinese classes, this has been very helpful. I found out what they want to read about. They don't want to read about any news. They don't want to read about any current events. They don't even want to read about their majors. They want to talk about movies. They want to talk about movies and TV and music and the NBA or whatever is what they want to talk about. And you can that's your content objective. You got a language objective and a content objective. Make that your content objective. Okay, so then the question is, well, how do you teach it if it's too difficult or too advanced? You got to remember, Lev Vygotsky and the zone of proximal development, right? You all know, yeah. So basically, if I see a heart, yeah, me too. Teach the parts, you got to if it's too far out of reach of their comprehension, they're not going to absorb it. And the worst part is, I don't know where you are, but in Korea and China, with Korean and Chinese students especially, they will never tell you that they don't understand, ever. They will, if you ask them if they understand, here's what I do. I ask them if they understand. If they don't say anything, that means no. If they don't say yes, that means no, is what it is. They will never tell you that they don't understand something. And they're going to pretend that they might too, and they're not going to. And what you need to do, I had a class, this is a true story, how I taught this. You got to just teach shallower. Do the reverse with what you did with teaching easy. If it's too easy, teach deeper and broader. If it's too hard, teach shallower and thinner or narrower. I had to teach, compare and contrast the philosophies of Arthur Schopenhauer and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz to students who could not form a sentence. That's what one of the articles that I had to teach about with, hey, raise your hand if you know who these two are. You know, can you talk about me? Right. What do you want me to? Okay. So how do you teach this? How did I teach this? What I did, I can tell you what I did. Get more superficial. All you have to do is just teach shallower. You don't need to go into this deep, you know, blah, blah, blah of the philosophies of Schopenhauer versus Leibniz and do a comparative analysis of whatever. Like, I want to say the F word, but I'll just say F word you, admins, I'm not doing that. What I can do is I'm going to teach them what they can absorb. Find what they can absorb. Go shallower. Compare the philosophies of Arthur Schopenhauer and Gottfried Leibniz? No. Okay, let's teach a little bit shallower, see if they would know this. Are you an optimist or a pessimist? Doing some research, I found Schopenhauer was very much a pessimist in philosophy, and Leibniz was an optimist. They were both basically, their competing philosophies would be optimism and pessimism. Are you an optimist or are you more of a pessimist? Make the lesson about that. There, it's shallower. It's something that they can work with. It's something that they can absorb. And it might not be something that they can absorb at all. In which case, what do? Shallower still. Go shallower. Do you know any philosophers? What philosophers do you know? Hey, they're both German. What do you know about Germany? Do you like German food? What do you know any German word? Give me something. Give me something there. Do you know any philosophers? No. What do you know about Germany? Nothing. Keep going shallower. What do you do? Keep going shallower. Whose hair is longer? Whose hair is longer? Schopenhauer looks handsomer, uglier than Leibniz. Leibniz is more whatever, like modern. Give me something. Younger, whatever. Teach comparisons and teach them blah blah or more blah blah. Generally 2 syllables is blah blah generally 3 syllables is more blah blah. You know what they'll be able to talk about? Something. They'll be there. Now they're able to compare and contrast, even if it's just whose hair is whiter. There, I gave them something. Now they're able to do something that they couldn't do before. They're able to say something in English that they couldn't say before. This is a real lesson, by the way, that I had to teach that they gave me. And I gave them something. I gave them something to do with it. You can make a lesson out of it. You just got to teach shallower. All right, that's basically what it is. The cousin of that is if there's too much to cover. You know, sometimes you're going to wait, which is better for a 4-month course? War and Peace or Twilight? Which book is better? I mean, in general, of course, I all know the end. Look, everybody, who is going to say that Twilight is a better written book than War and Peace? Really? Nobody. Nobody's going to say that. No, you're going to get your rear end kicked in a literary circle if you were to say that Twilight is better than War and Peace. But it's better material in general for speaking English. Why? Because you've only got X amount of time anyway. the lesson time is like a straw that you got to suck something out of, okay? You got to suck it both through a straw. Here's Twilight, here's War and Peace. You got the same straw and you got the same amount of time. In 4 months, you're not going to touch, you will not touch the level of depth that War and Peace or Crime and Punishment have. But you're gonna get a lot. You're gonna make a huge dent in Twilight with that. Okay, you can do that. You got the same straw, you got the same amount of time. You're not going to put a dent in War and Peace. It's not going to happen. Not in an English class. Not in unless they're really super advanced. You know, if you want to do it the wrong way, do all the things. Focus on everything. Speed run it. Cram it down their throats and try to make them memorize every single thing. If they got too much to cover, that would be the wrong way that you teach it. Do all the things. The right way you do it, chop it up into what are the most important parts. What's the summary? Teach them the summary. Teach them basically the summary of it. Teach the parts that they can absorb. A lesson is no good if they can't remember any of it afterwards. There's no point in, what's the point in teaching them anything if they remember nothing? It's not good. You got to teach them what they remember. At least, you know, cut it down to what they're going to remember and teach that. And this is important too, if you're teaching at a Hagwon, if you don't design the test yourself, teach what'll be on the test. Look at the test, see what's going to be on the test. It's only fair to, I never ever teach students something that's not going to be on the test. I never have anything, scratch that. I never teach students, I never have something on my test. I can't speak English very well. I'm sorry, my English is no good. I never put anything on my test that wasn't covered in the class. It's not fair. So teach what's going to be, if you don't design the test yourself, teach what's going to be on the test also, but teach them the summary, teach them what they can absorb and what they can talk about. If something is too complicated for them to talk about, teach them something they can talk about. This is not about which book is the best book or which book is the best written. It's what they can absorb and talk about and pedal around on. It is what it's really about. Number 3, how much time do we have left? I hope, am I good?
You have another 7 minutes.
7 minutes, okay, I'll speed run a little bit. Too technical. I've had books where you have to teach things like, okay, class, so tell me, what are auxiliary modal verbs? Can you tell me auxiliary modal verbs? We're going to have a lesson on auxiliary modal verbs and the 0th conditional. Who can tell me about, raise your hand if you can tell me about auxiliary modal verbs in the 0th conditional. We're going to talk about, you don't need to impress your students with complicated verbology if they can't, if their English is already, you know, low enough. Don't worry about teaching them technical terms. You don't teach them, okay, class, what is the auxiliary? We're going to learn the auxiliary. We're going to learn the proximal position of the proximal cause negates the foo faddle of the ding doggy and the zip loop. Blah, 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 blah. Might as well be speaking a totally different language as it is. You know, don't teach them the technical terminology. Instead, remember, we learn how to use nouns, verbs, and adjectives before we know what they are. Nobody taught it. We didn't learn nouns, verbs, and adjectives first. We learned that way later after we learned how to use it. So do the same thing. Give them fun, engaging context. Conditionals. What are conditionals? It's if. What are modals? Would, could, should. Give them a fun lesson in which they'll be able to say, if blah, 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 I would blah, blah, blah. If blah, 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 I could blah, blah, blah. That's what conditionals and modals are. Hey, class, zombies are going to attack tonight. A whole big army of zombies. What would you do? If an army of zombies were going to attack you tonight, what would you do? We should go to the police station, the grocery store. I should make a weapon out of blah, 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 blah. Look at that. Oh, wow. That's a much better one. Zombie apocalypse. That's a way funner lesson. That's way funner than whatever this is. Okay, just give them the context. Teach them what is it. I have a whole lesson about being stranded on a deserted island, and I give them, you know, sheets of paper with these 3 things. You know, I say you can take 3 of these items. What would you grab? The ship is sinking. What would you grab if the ship were sinking? And then they have to make a sentence with it. If I could take 3 things, I would grab the shovel, the rope, and the lighter. Hey class, there's a coconut tree. The coconuts are up there. You're hungry, but it's too high to get. Use your items. What would you do? How would you get the coconuts? You need those coconuts. How would you get the coconuts? And then you have them say, I would use, give them a context, give them a fun context where they're pedaling on their own. And you're not holding that, you're not holding the entire blah, 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 blah. By the way, this is true. The CDC actually has for real guidelines for how to survive a zombie apocalypse. And no, that's true. They really super do. And they've made it into like a fun little school lesson. So that's another thing you could do there. Running out of time, so not appropriate or relevant. When I say inappropriate materials, I'm trying not to say sexual at all. If it's something that's not really right for them. If they're a science class, but they give you an ESP book, for example, English for Specific Purposes, something that's just not, it would be good material if it's that specific, but it's too specific. What if it's a lesson about wind turbines and it's just a science class in general? Okay, well, remember, just take it and find out what they can talk about. You take it apart. You don't need to teach them every single part of a wind turbine and make them memorize it. Just what is there to talk about it? Discussion on renewable energy, fossil fuels. Some people are saying we should be fossil fuel independent, and then opponents say if we kill fossil fuels, we'll eliminate jobs in the fossil field. What are the pros and cons? What about the jobs that'll be law? There's a discussion to be had. There is a discussion to be had about, you can teach around it, teach what they can absorb and what they can peddle about. If this is about virology, it's just a science class and we're going into the whole virology thing, a whole bunch of stuff that even you don't understand. Okay, well, what are you doing in the middle of this pandemic? What have you been doing? How has COVID changed your life? Is this the new normal? Hey, do you know any conspiracy theories? What conspiracy theories have you heard about COVID? Do you believe any of them? There's something to discuss there. If materials are poorly made is another one. Poorly edited materials, or if it's confusing instructions, that's another kind of bad material. This right here is an actual, I was looking up like ZPD, and then it's like, no, you screwed up. You screwed up right here. That's not how you spell it. So I just included this because it was like, it's a good diagram otherwise, but you made a mistake. You made a typographical error. Other times it could be like, I like this one. This one is sometimes you have lessons, you have materials. Oh, yes.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Very, very interesting so far. But we have 2 more minutes
okay.
left for this session. And if you want to take some questions, then
okay, I'm just going to speed run the other stuff. If it's poorly made, I'm sorry. I thought I was gonna have too much time left over. Ugh, I'm terrible at this. Make it, I can upload this, by the way, if you want to. What you do simply is you have them find the mistakes. Have them find the mistakes and correct it. If it's too awkward and confusing, by the way, you could also have them, don't have them memorize technical terms. I'm going to speed run through the rest of this. Sorry, I didn't think I'd have enough time. If there's too much emphasis on technical terms, or if there's too much emphasis on phonics, don't worry about that. I'd say skip or abandon confusing questions. If they're too confusing, or if they're too technical, if they're not on the if they're on the test, you got to find a way to teach it. If they're not on the test, skip it. Nothing that gets in the way of their pedaling. Again, I'm a huge fan of the fill in the blanks and Kahoot, and my conclusion is that anything can be a lesson if you find it. There's a saying I saw: anything's a weapon if you throw it hard enough. Anything's every zoo's a petting zoo if you're not a pussy. Anything can be a lesson if you find it. You just got to find a way to serve it up, is what it is. And so long, the conclusion is, so long as you can find a way to make them pedal on their own, and keep them engaged, it's a good lesson. That's what I'd say. Okay, now we have time for questions. Sorry, I went a little bit over.
Yes, thank you so very much. Can I please invite everybody to unmute their mics and for a round of applause for Danny Jones. Thank you.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And I wish we had more time. I wish we had more time for to hear more. But yes, if you would like to upload on the Edzilla page, I think that is actually an option. So we can talk about that a little bit more later.
You'll put this on YouTube too, right?
Yes, it is on YouTube as well. Yes. There is a mandatory announcement that I have to make, and that is, of course, for the Easter egg hunt. The Easter egg number 2 is Blue Bayou. Blue Bayou, Easter egg number 2. Okay, so I'm sorry, Danny, there really isn't any more time for questions, and I'm sorry, audience.
Actually, you don't need to be sorry, because my biggest concern was that I was going to end too soon and choke in the middle where there's nothing to say. So actually, this is the preferred one. I'd have preferred this, but if you have any questions, you can ask me some other way. I don't know.
Well, in fact, I was going to say you can move on to Discord and continue the discussion there, and Danny can answer questions. If Danny, you would go to Discord, then you can answer questions there as well.
And I'm still figuring out Discord, so if I don't answer, you could also email me, but I'll try to answer on Discord too, yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming. I will stop the recording now.